Hey guys, tonight we're stepping quietly into the stillness of a Tudor chamber one that smells faintly of lavender, old wood, and a hint of royal dust. The fire crackles low, candles flicker along the stone walls, and in the very center, seated like an immovable statue in layers of velvet and lace, is Queen Elizabeth I. But she isn't holding court. She isn't plotting war or composing withering replies to suitors. Tonight, she wants one thing: peace and quiet, so she can finish stitching a lily onto a silk pillow. And for that, she's requested silence. Total, reverent, absolute silence. You're here, too. Not as a courtier, or a spy, or even a jester, just an invisible observer in the soft shadows, watching as the Virgin Queen, the great monarch of the English Renaissance, purses her lips, adjusts her embroidery hoop, and begins her nightly ritual. The only sound is the whisper of thread pulling through cloth dot. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Elizabeth's workroom is warm, stiflingly so. Heavy tapestries smother the walls, embroidered with vines and lions and heraldic beasts that all seem to be watching you. Outside, the wind rattles against the leaded windows, but in here, the air is perfectly still. You feel the stiffness of the wooden bench beneath you and the comforting scratch of wool against your skin. The Queen's expression is focused, mildly severe. Her hands move with slow confidence, threading a needle so fine you can barely see. The eye, she selects a gold thread and begins to stitch methodically, as if every point of the needle through the fabric is a line in a royal decree. A maidservant moves to adjust a cushion and immediately freezes. The floorboards betrayed her just the faintest creak. Elizabeth glances sideways, not even pausing her work, and the entire room tightens. A single breath out of place could summon the Queen's legendary temper, or worse, her quiet disapproval. And yet, you feel no fear, only curiosity and maybe a little sympathy. After all, imagine trying to concentrate with 6 people breathing around you, all terrified to sneeze. The Queen is composing more than just a flower. Some say she stitched hidden meanings into her patterns: roses for purity, thorns for strength, pomegranates for empire, or simply the eager interpretations of a court desperate to please. But watching her now, you start to believe it. There's intention in every motion, in every knot and tuck of thread. At her feet lies a plump ginger cat. He blinks slowly, unimpressed by monarchy, and occasionally twitches an ear. Even his purring feels respectful, barely audible, like a lullaby wrapped in velvet dot, and across the room a servant holds an hourglass. Not because the queen needs to know the time, but because the queen likes knowing the sand is there, quietly measuring something, perhaps progress, perhaps patience. Her silence is not empty, it's full of presence, like a library before dawn or a chapel after the choir leaves. You realize that for her, embroidery is not just pastime, it's ritual, it's order. It's the one thing in a chaotic world she can control. Stitch by careful stitch, she lifts the needle, knots the thread, and starts again. The lily begins to bloom under her fingers' white silk petals with a silver stem. A flower that will never wilt in a silence that feels like eternity. The air in the room is so still, you start to notice strange details. The uneven weave of the queen's sleeve, the tiny glint of a dropped pin resting on the floorboards, the faintest hum of wind snaking its way through a crack in the stained glass. You're not even sure how long you've been sitting there, watching her. Minutes, hours, time, like the needle, loops in slow, steady circles. You shift slightly, and the queen's eyes flick toward you, not unkind, just alert, as if she has ears in her collar and eyes in the back of her head. She doesn't say anything. She just threads a new strand of red silk into her needle and continues, looping it into a perfect lazy daisy. You're still wondering whether she's going to speak when she does, softly, as if addressing the fabric itself. When I was a girl, she says, I used to stitch roses into my cuffs, one for every lie I was told. It's unclear if this is a story, a confession, or a test. Probably all three. You just nod, even though she isn't looking. You start to picture her as a young princess, not yet crowned, wearing sleeves full of tiny roses like red warnings to the court. She must have been terrifying, even then sharp-tongued, watchful, and always 3 steps ahead. And yet, maybe there was softness too, back before the armor was sewn into the seams of her dresses. She snips the thread and leans back slightly. The queen's face is unreadable, but you notice something peculiar. Her embroidery doesn't follow any known pattern. It twists and curls in unexpected ways. She isn't just decorating a cushion. She's drawing something, a story, maybe, or a map. Historians still debate whether any of Elizabeth's surviving needlework includes secret codes. Some claim her monograms contain hidden warnings. Others argue it's nonsense symmetry mistaken for conspiracy. But here, in this moment, watching her hands glide like dancers over the cloth, you can't help but wonder you stitched your fears into fabric, would anyone believe you? Across the room, one of the ladies in waiting stifles a yawn. The queen pauses, not with annoyance, but a kind of aristocratic disappointment, as if boredom in her presence were a personal failure. She clears her throat gently, and the lady straightens so fast you hear the stays of her corset creak. The silence returns, heavier now, the kind that settles behind your eyes and makes everything feel like a slow dream. The queen begins a new section of the pattern. This time, it's not a flower. It's something stranger, geometric, like the floor tiles in the palace chapel. Repeating diamonds edged with pale green. She simply knows where each stitch should go. From behind a folding screen, a soft sound, the page turning in a forgotten book. A footman, probably. Someone with the quietest job in England, and still, somehow, too loud. You feel for him. No one escapes notice here. Even silence is graded. You begin to relax, though the queen has settled into a rhythm now. She is elsewhere, in memory, perhaps, or imagination. Her breath is steady. Her fingers barely tremble. You could almost fall asleep here, rocked by the faint scratch of thread on cloth, the low rustle of skirts, the warm hush of nothing happening. It's in these quiet hours people say that Elizabeth made her truest decisions, not in the throne room, not at the council table, but here, surrounded by velvet and candlelight, with only silk and silence to guide her. And then, with no warning, she speaks again. "Do you know," she says, "why I prefer lilies?" You shake your head, because, of course, you don't. They don't beg for attention. They just ... remain. That's all she says. No explanation, no follow-up. But the thread she's using now is wider than the rest, almost luminous. It seems to catch every flicker of the candle flames. She places each stitch with exaggerated care, as though she's honoring something you can't quite see. The cat stretches and curls into a different position, this time with one paw resting gently against the hem of the queen's gown. She doesn't shoo him away. She simply keeps stitching, as though the soft weight of the paw helps anchor her to the world. You think about lilies, about silence, about what it means to remain. You think about the power of small things done consistently, and then you stop thinking altogether. You just listen. The candle wicks sputter slightly. The fire cracks once, softly. Outside, the moon drifts past the window, unnoticed. And inside, the chamber, Elizabeth, Queen of England, sews another petal into eternity. You can tell the Queen is starting to drift. Not into sleep, she'd never allow that with others present, but into a kind of inward quiet, like someone walking familiar hallways in their mind. Her shoulders soften. The needle still rises and falls, but more slowly now, as if each stitch is a memory. You settle deeper into your seat, the wood warm from your own body heat. Your eyes trace the edge of the embroidery hoop, now filled with a blooming garden that wasn't there just an hour ago. It's become a miniature landscape: roses, lilies, curling vines, and something that might be a phoenix. If you squint behind the queen, the fire casts long shadows on the tapestries. Lions and unicorns shimmer in and out of shape. You get the feeling they've seen things, heard whispered secrets in rooms like this one, laughed silently when the humans thought themselves clever. Elizabeth shifts in her chair. Her skirts rustle like autumn leaves, and then she speaks again, this time with a half smile. They once told me women should embroider, not rule. She doesn't laugh, but the tilt of her head tells you she finds it amusing, or at least worth remembering. And yet, here I am, she says, drawing the needle through the cloth, doing both rather neatly. That gets a stifled chuckle from one of the ladies in waiting. A dangerous game, laughter in this room, but the queen lets it pass, perhaps because it's true. You look down at the pattern again. It's too elaborate to be random, too peculiar to be copied. There's something familiar in its codes of royal emblems. Yes, but also ... a knot, a maze, some secret logic you don't yet understand. Historians have argued for decades about whether Elizabeth designed her own embroidery patterns. Some say yes, pointing to private letters and marginal sketches. Others dismiss it as romantic myth. But sitting here now, you start to think the truth is somewhere in between. She didn't just stitch design, she stitched decisions. On the left border of the cushion, a row of pale pink clovers emerges. Not a typical royal motif. Clovers were associated with common folk, luck, and small joys. You wonder if she's remembering someone, a childhood friend, a servant she liked, a life she might have had if the crown hadn't come calling. The queen's hand pauses briefly. She taps the needle against her lower lip, lost in thought. Then she threads in a new color, an odd, dusky blue, and begins outlining what looks suspiciously like a dog, a small one, fluffy. You tilt your head. She notices. He was called Pomino, she says, answering your unspoken question. Horrid little thing, bit everyone, but he adored me. You try not to smile. Elizabeth notices that too. He died on my birthday. She resumes stitching, faster now, perhaps trying to outrun that particular memory. Still, she keeps the dog in the embroidery. A strange honor for a pet she calls horrid. Then again, maybe that's the point. Maybe this tapestry isn't about beauty or loyalty or public image. Maybe it's just ... real. Full of creatures and people and thoughts that made up her life, stitched into silk where no one but she could read them. At the edge of the room, a servant quietly replaces the melted candle. Another enters with a tray, but pauses at the door, uncertain. The queen waves him in without a word, still working. He places a cup of warm milk near her elbow, bows so low you worry he'll fall over, and retreats like a whisper. The milk steams. Gently, she doesn't drink it yet, just lets it sit there, as if waiting for the moment to be right. Outside the window, the wind has softened. You hear an owl call once, then silence again. The entire palace feels wrapped in wool. You notice, now that the queen is humming, softly, an old tune, nothing grand or ceremonial, just something from childhood, maybe. You can't place it, but it fits. Like the stitching, it loops and returns, steady and comforting. A lullaby meant for herself. You're starting to feel drowsy, too. Not from boredom, nothing about this is boring, but from the gentle repetition. The way her hand moves the same way, over and over. The way the needle glints just once with each pull. The way her voice, when it comes, is soft enough to blend with the fire. She sips the milk now, just once, then sets it down. Her eyes close not fully, just enough to imagine something or someone not here anymore. Another stitch, another petal. You begin to wonder if the queen knows you're still watching, or if, in her mind, she's alone against just her, the thread, and the endless work of being remembered. The room has grown warmer, or perhaps you've simply surrendered to its rhythm. Everything is slowed to the pace of breath and thread. Inhale, pull, exhale, loop. You're no longer sure where one moment ends and the next begins. Elizabeth shifts again, this time not from discomfort, but memory. You can tell. Her eyes are fixed on the fabric, but her mind has gone elsewhere. Somewhere far from the velvet cushions and stiff manners of court, there was a storm. She says suddenly, and without context. The summer I turned 11. We were at Hatfield. You don't interrupt. This is one of those moments when she speaks less to you and more to the quiet. The wind took the orchard fence. We watched it go, piece by piece, like a flock of frightened birds. Mary wept. I laughed. That's how they always told the story later, that I laughed. You know better than to ask whether it's true. She continues. They said I was strange, too calm for a child. But storms never frightened me. People did. The needle moves again, a bold line this time, dark green, like the trunk of a tree. Or maybe a storm-felled fence. There's a pause while she adjusts her seat. Her fingers tap against the embroidery hoop, like they're testing a thought before speaking it aloud. "You must learn," she murmurs, "to be unmoved by weather and whispers." It sounds like advice, but it's really a memory that loops through her fingers and lands gently on the fabric. You wonder how many of her memories are stored: this wind, silk, in silence, in motifs no one else understands. As you watch, she stitches a cluster of pears, 3 of them slightly tilted, oddly specific. Historians note that Elizabeth often used fruit in her personal iconography. Pears were thought to represent affection or sometimes sorrow. Some say she stitched them in honor of her mother. Others believe they referred to suitors she never accepted. But tonight, they simply appear, quiet, round, and golden. Their meaning is known only to her. From the corner, you hear a soft snore. One of the ladies in waiting has succumbed to the room's hush. Elizabeth doesn't mind. She only smiles faintly, like she's secretly pleased by the idea that someone finds her presence soothing rather than terrifying. You hear another whisper of movement, the fire settling, the owl returning, maybe a breeze tickling the edge of a tapestry. Nothing urgent, nothing sharp. The entire room is cottoned with calm. A few stitches later, Elizabeth adds something strange, a half-finished crown. Not the Tudor rose, not a proper coronet. Just a suggestion of gold, a thread or 2 of crimson, and then nothing. She doesn't complete it. You think about asking. Then you don't. It's not the first time tonight that the embroidery seems to say what she won't. You look over her shoulder and realize she's filled nearly a third of the hoop. It's not a neat, symmetrical piece. It's chaotic, beautiful, and deeply personal. You begin to suspect that this isn't a cushion cover. It's a diary no one will ever read properly. She begins to hum again, the same tune from earlier. This time, you catch a few words, mouthed rather than sung. Green sleeves, green sleeves. She lets the phrase trail off. Whether the song brings her peace or pain, you can't quite tell. Probably both. Some scholars insist Elizabeth never liked the ballad. Others claim she composed an early version of it. There's no proof either way, but sitting here, you understand why people would want it to be true. There's something haunting in the way she hums, it like someone walking through a house. With a single, precise movement, she knots off a section and threads a new color silver. This time, you expect another flower, but she surprises you. Instead, She begins a small sailing ship, a caravel, perhaps, sturdy, with square sails. She doesn't explain. She doesn't need to. England's fate was stitched to the sea, after all. And hers, along with it. You find yourself imagining what it must have been like, ruling a kingdom where your enemies arrived by water and your allies blew in with the wind. The sea, too, must have seemed like a storm, untrustworthy, powerful, necessary, and yet she stitches the ship with great care, not as a threat, but as a companion, something brave, even fragile. The Catius still there stirs, stretches, and returns to his nap, his nose tucked into his tail. You wish you could do the same, but the room holds you, tenderly, alert. Elizabeth sips from her cup again. The milk has cooled, but she doesn't seem to mind. You don't realize how long you've gone without speaking. No one has. Words feel like stones in this place, too heavy to lift unless absolutely required. Still, you manage one, just one. Why? Tonight, she doesn't ask you to clarify. She never does. Instead, she lifts her eyes sharp, amused and faintly tired, because some nights require silence. And thread is the only language that listens. She returns to her stitching, and you return to stillness. The evening deepens, folding around you like a soft, worn cloak. The shadows lengthen, stretching lazily across the floorboards, and the quiet hum of the castle settles into a gentle lull. You watch as the queen continues to work her needle through the fabric, her movements becoming slower, more deliberate. It's almost hypnotic, this dance between hand and thread. Each stitch a whispered secret. You realize that in this room, under the glow of flickering candles, time behaves differently. It folds in on itself, and you find your thoughts drifting along with it, tangled up in threads of history and imagination. The queen pauses, her fingers resting lightly on the embroidery hoop. Her eyes meet yours for a brief moment, sharp and steady. There's a hint of something there, an unspoken understanding. You're a witness to this quiet ritual, part of a moment meant to be private yet shared. She picks up a different colored thread, a muted gold that catches the light just so, and begins to stitch something new. You lean in, trying to make out the shapes forming under her skilled hands. It's a small crown, delicate and intricate, not the grand imperial symbol you'd expect, but something more personal. A crown that feels less like a throne and more like a promise or a burden. Historians often debate whether Elizabeth saw her crown as a symbol of power or a weight she bore reluctantly. Some say her embroidery reflects this duality, her public strength and private vulnerability woven together in silk and thread. Here, in this room, it feels like you're seeing the ladder. The cat, sensing the shift in atmosphere, rises and pads silently to the queen's side, rubbing gently against her robes. She strokes his fur absently, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. You imagine what it would be like to sit here, in this quiet chamber, far from the demands of court and kingdom. To have the space to simply breathe and create, to let your mind wander like a lazy stream. A soft creak from the floorboards signals the approach of a servant, bearing a small tray with herbal tea. The queen thanks him with a nod, but doesn't break her concentration. As she takes a sip, she begins to hum again low, lilting melody that seems to echo the rhythm of her stitching. The song is familiar, yet elusive, like a dream just out of reach. You think about the lives that have passed through these halls, the whispered conversations, the plotted schemes, the quiet moments like this one that go unnoticed by history, books, and yet it's in these small, slow moments that the true story unfolds. Not in battles or speeches, but in the simple act of creating something lasting, something personal. The queen's needle glides through the fabric, tracing patterns that are both beautiful and mysterious. You can't help but wonder what stories are hidden in the folds of this embroidery. What secrets are stitched between the threads? Outside, the night deepens. The moon casts a pale glow through the window, and the world feels hushed to cool, as if holding its breath. You lean back, letting the calm wash over you, grateful for this rare glimpse into a quieter, softer side of history. The needle rises and falls again, slower now, as if the queen's hand is measuring time by the rhythm of her own breath. You watch closely, noticing the way her fingers handle the delicate silk threads, careful, precise, but with a tenderness that feels almost like a caress. It's strange to think this meticulous work is done by the same woman who faced down revolts and foreign threats with unwavering resolve. Your eyes follow the pattern taking shape this time. A tiny castle turret. It's not the grand tower of London or the sprawling palaces you'd imagine. Instead, it's small, almost humble, like a quiet watchtower perched on a hill. You wonder if it symbolizes something hidden, perhaps a refuge or a place of solitude. Historians still debate whether Elizabeth's embroidery included coded messages or personal symbols meant only for her closest confidants. Some argue that the stitching reveals a secret language of power and identity. Others think it was simply a pastime, a soothing ritual during restless nights. You find it hard to believe it was just a hobby. There's something in the way she weaves the threads that feels deliberate, purposeful, almost like a conversation with herself. A faint tapping at the door draws your attention. A young page enters, careful not to disturb the atmosphere. He carries a folded piece, a parchmental letter. No doubt. The queen's eyes flick briefly to it, but then return to her embroidery without a word. You sense the letter is unwelcome, but she allows it to wait, preferring the quiet company of thread and cloth. You can't help but admire her discipline finding, calm in the chaos of court life must have been no small feat as she stitches. The queen hums a different tune now, something lighter, almost playful. You catch a glimpse of amusement in her Isa, reminder that even monarchs, with all their weighty duties, had moments of levity. The cat, sensing a shift in mood, jumps onto the windowsill and stretches luxuriously, its tail flicking with lazy contentment. It's a small, everyday scene, one that feels oddly grounding amidst the grandeur. You imagine the queen's life outside this room, the heavy gowns, the endless ceremonies, the expectations that weighed on her like armor. Here, she's simply a woman with a needle and thread, creating something beautiful out of quiet moments. The embroidery grows, the stitches weaving together stories you can't fully grasp but can feel deeply. It's a tapestry of a life lived with purpose, patience, and an uncanny ability to find stillness in the storm outside. A breeze rustles the curtains gently, carrying with it the faint scent of jasmine and smoke from the hearth. The castle breathes, with you alive and timeless. You take a slow breath, feeling the calm seep into your bones. This moment, soft, slow, and stitched with care's exactly what you needed. The quiet hum of the castle seems to pulse in time with Elizabeth's needle as it dances across the fabric. The room feels suspended in a delicate balance, halfway between wakefulness and a dream you didn't know you were having. You find yourself leaning in as if to catch some secret whispered only in these slow, careful stitches. Elizabeth pauses briefly, lifting the embroidery hoop to better see her work. The design is evolving into something more intricate, now delicate vines curling around tiny blossoms. The colors shift subtly from deep greens to soft pinks, creating a gentle contrast that soothes rather than commands attention. You notice the light in her eyes has softened, too. There's a quiet patience there, the kind that only comes from years of enduring both triumph and heartbreak without letting either show too clearly. "Did you know?" she says softly, as if sharing a secret, that embroidery was once considered a noble outfit only for ladies of high birth. You nod, even though she can't see you. It feels right to acknowledge this shared knowledge in the stillness. She continues, "Yet Here I am, stitching through the night, just like any seamstress, hoping for a good day's work tomorrow. There's humor in her voice, light irony that makes the heavy weight of her crown seem a little less daunting. Historians often point out that Elizabeth's embroidery was not just a pastime, but a subtle form of communication and control. Some say she used her stitches to influence court politics, while others believe it was her way of maintaining sanity amid endless expectations. You wonder if this is true, or maybe, like you suspect, it was simply a quiet rebellion away to claim a small piece of peace in a world that never stopped demanding her attention. The cat hops down from the windowsill and settles near her feet, curling into a perfect circle. Its rhythmic purring adds a layer of comfort to the room, a soft background hum that blends with a crackling fire. Elizabeth's hands move with renewed purpose. She begins stitching a small, burden, unusual choice, delicate and free-feeling. It's as if she's threading a bit of herself into the cloth, an escape into flight and freedom that the walls of her palace never allowed. Some scholars argue the bird symbolizes hope or even defiance. Others think it's a simple nod to nature's beauty. You like to think it's both. The hours drift by, marked only by the steady progress of needle and thread. You feel the tension in your shoulders ease, your thoughts slowing to match the measured pace of the embroidery. It's curious how something so simple, just thread on fabric, can hold such power. A reminder that even in the most demanding lives, small acts of creation can provide comfort and control. You glance out the window. The moon is high, casting silver light that filters through the curtains in gentle beams. The world outside is silent, but inside this room, history is being stitched quietly, one peaceful moment at a time. You find yourself grateful for this glimpse behind the scenes, for the chance to witness a softer side of a queen whose story is often told in battles and speeches. Here, in the hush of night and thread, she is simply Elizabeth, and you are here with her, sharing a moment of calm in a world that rarely paused to breathe. The night continues to deepen, the quiet settling like a soft blanket around you. Elizabeth's hands move steadily, the rhythmic motion of the needle soothing your thoughts as much as hers. You start to notice the subtle details, the slight twitch of her brow when a stitch doesn't land quite right, the gentle exhale when it does. Her embroidery now takes on a new shape, a small garden gate, wrought iron and slightly ajar. It's an invitation, perhaps, or a symbol of the fine line. between public and private life. You imagine stepping through that gate, leaving behind the rigid protocol of the court for something softer, quieter. You wonder what it would be like to be the woman behind the crown, to have the weight of a nation on your shoulders, but still crave the simple peace found in needle and thread. It's a paradox that the night seems to embrace, wrapping you both in its quiet understanding. Elizabeth's gaze lingers on the gate as she stitches, her eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. There's a flicker of something nostalgia, maybe, or longing for a freedom she rarely allowed herself. Invited to witness moments the world rarely sees. You remember reading that embroidery was considered a proper pastime for women of her era, way to demonstrate grace and patience. But here, it feels like so much more than that. It's a language without words, a slow conversation stitched in silk dot. The cat stretches lazily, then settles once more near her feet, its steady purring a gentle counterpoint to the quiet night. It's a small comfort, a reminder that even royalty sought companionship in the simplest forms. You reach for your own breath, syncing it to the rhythm of the needle. In this shared silence, you realize how rare these moments are, how precious it is to find stillness in the relentless flow of time. Historians debate the significance of Elizabeth's hobbies, with some dismissing them as trivial distractions. But as you sit here watching her create, you know better. These slow, deliberate acts of creation carry their own quiet power, a subtle resistance to the chaos of the world beyond these walls. She adds a few more stitches to the gate, then pauses, her fingers tracing the outline as if memorizing it. The room feels charged with an unspoken promise that behind every symbol, every quiet moment, there is a story waiting to be told. Outside, the wind rustles softly, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the gardens below. It's a fragrance that somehow feels timeless, a link between past and present. You feel your eyelids growing heavy, the calmness wrapping around you like the softest quilt. The Queen's quiet focus invites you to let go of the day's noise, to settle into the rhythm of the night as you sit here, caught between history and hush. You realize that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones told slowly, stitch by stitch, in the gentle company of silence. The candlelight flickers softly as you watch Elizabeth's hands move with steady purpose. The embroidery now shows the beginnings of a small boat, its sails gently billowing as if caught in an invisible breeze. It's a quiet symbol, subtle, yet evocative hint of travel, adventure, or perhaps escape. You imagine the feeling of the sea air, salty and fresh, contrasting with the warm, stuffy castle room. It's almost as if this tiny stitched boat carries a secret yearning for freedom beyond the walls that surround you both. You remember hearing that. Elizabeth was well versed in the politics and cultures of faraway lands. She even employed spies and diplomats to navigate the treacherous waters of European alliances. Yet here, in this moment, she seems to be dreaming quietly of simpler voyages, ones measured in stitches rather than fleets. The room feels still, but the embroidered boat seems to set your imagination afloat. You think about how the Queen's life was a constant balancing act between duty and desire, public spectacle and private reflection. Historians debate how much her personal hobbies influenced her reign. Some argue that these quiet moments of creation helped her maintain the clarity and patience needed for leadership. Others suggest they were mere distractions from the pressures of the throne. You find yourself siding with the first. There's a calm strength in the slow work of needle and thread, a meditative focus that could only come from someone used to carrying great responsibilities. The cat stretches lazily, then pats over to sit beside the embroidery hoop. Its tail flicks in time with the gentle thrum of the room. You can't help but smile at this tiny companion, an unexpected guest in a story filled with intrigue and power. Elizabeth dips her needle once more, the silk thread looping through the fabric like a whispered promise. You think about the countless stories hidden in these stitches, stories of hope, fear, triumph, and quiet resilience. Outside, the moon hangs low, casting pale light over the gardens and beyond. The world outside feels vast and mysterious, but here, in this softly lit chamber, time moves gently, measured by the pulse of needle and thread. You take a deep breath, letting the stillness settle over you like a lullaby. There's a strange comfort in knowing that, even in the most turbulent lives, there can be moments of peace and quiet creativity. The Queen's focus never wavers, her needle carving a small, slow path through history. And you, sitting here in the dim glow, are lucky enough to follow along, one gentle stitch at a time. The night air feels cooler now, drifting softly through the open window, carrying the faint murmur of distant footsteps and the occasional call of a night bird. You settle deeper into the quiet, the gentle click of Elizabeth's needle threading through the fabric, a steady companion to the darkness outside. Her embroidery has taken on a new elementa, tiny key, stitched carefully in muted bronze threads. It's a small but powerful symbol, and you find yourself wondering what doors it might unlock. Is it a key to a secret chamber? A metaphor for knowledge kept just out of reach? Elizabeth's lips curve into a faint smile, almost as if she's Aware of your curiosity, you imagine her thinking about the many locked doors in her life, the ones she could open and those she could not, the restrictions of her role, the secrets of court, and perhaps the personal freedoms forever beyond. Her grasp. Historians still argue over the significance of such motifs in Elizabeth's needlework. Some say they were personal reminders of power and control. Others believe they were simply decorative, with no deeper meaning. But sitting here now, surrounded by the soft glow of candlelight and the faint scent of lavender, you feel the weight of possibility. The cat stretches again, its fur shimmering softly in the flickering light before curling back into a ball of warmth at the Queen's feet. It's a small moment of comfort, a reminder that even amid the grandeur and complexity, there is space for simplicity and quiet companionship. Elizabeth's hand moves smoothly, weaving the key into the fabric with care. You notice the way her eyes narrow, just slightly, concentration mixed with a hint of satisfaction. It's clear this stitching is more than routine. It's an expression of something deeply personal. You think about how embroidery might have offered her a sense of control when so many aspects of her life were dictated by politics, tradition, and expectation. The needle becomes a tool not just for creation, but for navigating the complex threads of her existence. Outside, the moon continues its slow journey across the sky, casting silvery patterns that dance lightly on the walls. The world feels vast, but distant, held at bay by the quiet intimacy of this room. You take a slow breath, the calm settling over you like a gentle tide. Here, in this shared stillness, history feels less like a distant story and more like a lived experience, soft, intricate, and endlessly human. Elizabeth's needle moves steadily onward, and you feel your own thoughts begin to unwind, drifting, with the steady rhythm of thread pulling through cloth. It's a quiet journey, the one that holds a surprising depth of meaning. And as the night wraps around you both, you realize how rare and precious these moments of gentle reflection truly are. The needle continues its quiet dance, pulling thread through fabric with a patience that almost hypnotizes you. Elizabeth's eyes never leave the cloth, but you catch the faintest glimmer of thought flickering behind them, like shadows playing on a calm pond. The embroidery now features a small lantern, its flickering light captured in delicate golden stitches. You imagine the warm glow of that tiny flame, a beacon in the dark, guiding the way through unknown paths. It feels oddly comforting, like a secret shared between you and the Queen. You think about how important light must have been in the cold, drafty halls of her palace. Candles were precious, flickering sources of warmth and security. In a world before electricity. It's no surprise that a lantern would find its way into her stitching. Historians often discuss the symbolism of light in Elizabeth's time, hope, guidance, divine favor, but some also suggest she used such symbols to remind herself of her own resilience amid uncertainty. You find yourself wondering if this lantern was stitched for the same reason, to hold on to a small piece of hope during long nights filled with worry and expectation. The cat stretches lazily, eyes half closed, then pads softly over to circle the lantern in the embroidery, as if paying homage to its glow. Its purring is a gentle reminder of the quiet companionship you share in this moment. Elizabeth's fingers move with slow precision, looping threads to create shadows and highlights. The texture seems almost tangible. The light caught in the fabric like a whispered secret. You imagine how many nights she must have spent here, stitching through the silence, finding peace in the steady rhythm. It's a practice you wish you could borrow for yourself. The ability to slow down, to create something gentle and enduring from simple, repeated acts. Outside, the wind rustles the leaves of the garden trees, and the distant sound of hooves echoes faintly, reminder that the world keeps turning beyond this quiet chamber. You breathe in deeply, the calm settling over your thoughts like a soft, steady tide. The needle moves again, steady and sure, and you feel the peaceful pull of this shared silence. The Queen's embroidery is no longer just a pastime. It's a slow story, unfolding a soft embroidered poem about light, patience, and the quiet strength found in small acts of care. You realize that this moment still. The room feels even quieter now, as if the night itself has settled into the steady rhythm of Elizabeth's needle. You notice the subtle changes in her expression, the calm focus, the occasional soft smile, and the faint sigh when a stitch feels just right. It's a dance between concentration and comfort, a balance you're beginning to understand. Her embroidery is now evolving into a series of intertwined rings, circles overlapping in delicate harmony. They remind you of the complex web of alliances and promises that marked her reign. Each ring might represent a bond, a treaty, or a whispered agreement behind closed doors. You recall reading that Elizabeth navigated her kingdom through a maze of political pressures, religious conflicts, and personal loyalties. Historians still debate how much of her success was due to her political savvy versus sheer luck. But in this quiet moment, it feels like these rings hold the answer, an elegant symbol of connection and endurance. You imagine the painstaking care required to stitch each loop perfectly, mirroring the care she must have taken to maintain peace among often hostile factions. It's no wonder that embroidery became more than a hobby, was a metaphor woven into the fabric of her life. The cat, ever your silent companion, curls closer to her feet, as if understanding the significance of these delicate patterns. Its gentle purring blends seamlessly with the soft sound of thread sliding through cloth. Elizabeth pauses for a moment, her fingers resting lightly on the fabric. She looks up, eyes meeting yours in an imaginary, shared understanding. There's a quiet defiance in that gaze, reminder that behind the poise and grace was a woman who fought to keep her realm united. You feel a sense of calm wash over you, carried by the slow, deliberate rhythm of the stitching. It's as if the world outside has softened, muted by the quiet power of this intimate scene. The night air drifts through the window again, carrying the faint scent of rosemary and wood smoke. It's a reminder that even in the midst of political turmoil, life went on simple, sensory, and real. You think about how Elizabeth's embroidery, these slow, repetitive actions, may have been her way of grounding herself, a small anchor in a sea of uncertainty. Your eyelids grow heavier. The soft cadence of needle and thread weaving a lullaby that carries you gently toward rest. In this shared stillness, you find a peaceful moment, a chance to breathe, to pause, and to simply be. The night stretches on, and the soft glow of candlelight flickers gently across the room, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Elizabeth's hands continue their quiet work, each stitch placed with care and purpose. You find yourself drawn deeper into the slow rhythm, as if time itself has slowed to match the pace of her needle. The embroidery now reveals a delicate bird perched on a branch, feathers finely detailed, wings tucked close. You think of the symbolism, freedom, grace, perhaps a longing to soar beyond the confines of palace walls. The bird feels like a small rebellion stitched into the fabric, a whisper of hope and escape. You recall that Elizabeth was known as the Virgin Queen, a title that shaped much of her public image and private life. Historians still debate the real reasons behind this choice, whether it was political strategy or personal conviction. Either way, it adds another layer to this quiet moment of creation. The cat shifts position, settling down with a soft sigh at the foot of the throne. Its presence is a steady, comforting rhythm against the delicate sound of silk thread pulling through linen. Elizabeth's eyes soften as she finishes the bird, her fingers lingering over the last stitches. It's a tender moment, as if she's acknowledging the small freedoms that exist even in the most controlled lives. You imagine the countless hours spent in rooms like this, surrounded by tapestries and secrets, finding solace in the tactile act of stitching. It's a quiet rebellion against the chaos of court life, a way to claim a small piece of peace outside. The stars twinkle faintly, distant and serene. The world beyond the castle feels vast and unknowable, but here, in this warm chamber, you are safe in the slow, steady embrace of history and hush. You let your breath lengthen, the calm seeping deeper with every exhale. The story of Elizabeth's embroidery is no longer just a tale of thread and fabric tits, a meditation on patience, resilience, and the quiet strength found in small acts. You feel your thoughts begin to soften, folding gently into the steady cadence of needle and thread as the night carries you forward into a peaceful rest. The candle's flame flickers low, casting a soft amber glow that warms the cool stone walls of the chamber. Elizabeth's hands move more slowly now, the night deepening both outside and within. The embroidery has transformed into a small crown, delicate and finely detailed, nestled among vines and blossoms. You imagine the weight of that crown not just as a symbol of power, but as a physical burden resting on her head day. The intricacies of ruling, the expectations, the constant scrutiny. It's a quiet reminder that behind every grand gesture, there is a personal story woven with threads of patience and sacrifice. Historians often speak of Elizabeth's reign as a golden age, a time of flourishing art and exploration, but they also debate the emotional toll it took on her, the loneliness hidden beneath the public persona. This embroidered crown seems to capture that bittersweet truth perfectly. The cat, sensing the slowing pace, curls more tightly, its rhythmic breathing blending into the stillness of the room. It's a small comfort, a steady presence in a life marked by constant change. Elizabeth's eyes linger on the crown, her fingers tracing the stitches as if drawing strength from the image. You feel the weight of the moment, the quiet dignity and resilience required to carry a kingdom and still find solace in such delicate work. You take a deep breath, letting the softness of the scene envelop you. The night feels safe here, wrapped in the gentle cadence of needle and thread, where power and vulnerability exist side by side. Outside, the breeze stirs the branches, and distant church bells toll quietly, lullaby for the restless. You feel yourself sinking deeper into calm, the slow unfolding of history easing you toward rest. This slow story of Elizabeth's embroidery reminds you that even in lives filled with grandeur and duty, there is always room for small, tender moments. Moments that ground us, connect us, and gently guide us home. You close your eyes briefly, imagining the softness of the fabric, the gentle pull of the thread, and the quiet heartbeat of the night surrounding you both. The room feels hushed now. The final threads of Elizabeth's embroidery coming together like a whispered secret between you and the Queen. The last stitch secures. A delicate rose-soft petals unfolding in subtle shades of pink and cream. It's a gentle symbol, one of beauty, grace, and perhaps the fleeting nature of life itself. You reflect on how this quiet act of creation has unfolded a slow, steady journey through the tapestry of Elizabeth's thoughts and emotions. The rose feels like a closing statement, a soft exhale after the tension and complexity of her reign. Historians often admire the Queen's resilience, but they still debate how much of her personal life remained hidden behind the public mask. This embroidered rose seems to capture the mystery, perfectly visible yet elusive, simple yet profound. The cat stretches once more, then settles comfortably near the warmth of the candlelight. Its soft purring blends with the silence, creating a cocoon of calm that wraps around you both. You realize how rare and precious this moment has been. The chance to witness a quiet side of history, often overshadowed by grand events and dramatic tales. Here, in this softly lit chamber, you've shared a peaceful, intimate journey with one of history's most fascinating figures. As your eyelids grow heavier, you feel the steady rhythm of needle and thread lulling you toward rest. The slow, gentle story has done its work, candling the knots of the day. Weaving calm into your thoughts, you take a deep, slow breath and imagine the softness of the embroidered rose under your fingertips, the warmth of the candlelight, and the steady presence of the Queen's quiet strength. The night outside remains vast and mysterious, but here, in this room, you are safe, wrapped in the gentle embrace of history and hush. Now, as the night deepens and your thoughts begin to slow, let yourself drift gently into a peaceful state. Feel the softness of the air around you, cool and calm, like a gentle breath settling over a quiet garden. Imagine the subtle glow of candlelight fading slowly into the distance, leaving behind only the faintest trace of warmth. Your body relaxes, sinking deeper into comfort. Each breath grows slower, heavier, as if the rhythm of the night itself is guiding you toward rest. The steady pulse of the Queen's embroidery, slow, deliberate, and unhurried, becomes your own quiet lullaby. There is no rush here, no urgency, only calm, patience, and the steady unfolding of time, like petals gently opening in the morning sun. You are safe, surrounded by history's soft whispers and the comforting presence of the past. Allow your mind to soften, thoughts floating like gentle clouds on a serene sky. The intricate patterns of Elizabeth's needlework fade into peaceful shapes, wrapping you in a cocoon of quiet and stillness. As you settle into this calm space, know that you are held by the simple beauty of a slow, steady story. And when you finally close your eyes, may your dreams be gentle and your rest deep. Sleep well, wrapped in the soft embrace of history and hush.